So the story of Ruth tells us that she was originally married to a man named Malone. After some years, unfortunately, Malone dies. Her mother-in-law, Naomi, tells Ruth to go back home because she no longer has a future. Ruth instead decides to follow Naomi back to her homeland. There she meets Boaz, a close relative of Malone. Back then, the law said that if a man died without having a son, then a close relative could marry the widow. And from that new marriage, once a son was born, then that son would have the name of the deceased husband. This way, the genealogy of the deceased husband would not die, but instead carry on. So in Ruth's case, Boaz was a close relative of Malone. Boaz ends up marrying Ruth, and they have a son. That son technically belonged to Malone, not Boaz. If Ruth had not been redeemed, she would not be allowed to own any properties. Most likely, she would have been forced into prostitution in order to make a living. Instead, now she has a son, and now she has a future. When you think about it, this is an actual illustration of what Jesus did for us, of his plan of redemption. You see, when Ruth was married to Malone, she had a future. She could own properties. She had the ability of having children, and those children would be able to take care of Ruth when she was old. But after Malone died, that entire future died as well. In a similar manner, Adam and Eve also had a bright future in the beginning. But after the original sin, that future also died. The law said that Ruth could only be saved by a close relative, someone related to her deceased husband. And if you think about it, that's exactly what Jesus did. When Jesus came down to earth and was born as a human, he became a close relative of us. He was 100% God and he was 100% human. And this allowed Jesus to suffer the same temptations as us and even more. He did all of that just for us. But what if I told you that his mission was not to die for us?